Right, now should the King pay inheritance tax? That's what we're asking. Earlier this week, the Treasury Minister, James Murray, was asked if it was fair that King Charles can avoid paying inheritance tax when many farmers will have no choice.
There's no obligation on King Charles to pay inheritance tax. He can choose to pay it if he wishes. Is that fair?
I'm not going to comment on individual taxpayers' situation. What we talk about...
I'm just asking you whether, in principle, is that fair?
Well, he's still an individual taxpayer as it relates to his private estates. You know, what we're talking about here is the rules which apply to estates subject to agricultural property relief.
Okay, but let me ask you a different question. Are there any plans to make that compulsory, for example?
To make what compulsory, sorry?
The monarch having to pay inheritance tax, sovereign to sovereign?
No, we have no plans on that front.
Right.
Now, that was James Murray speaking to Victoria Derbyshire on Newsnight. Well, should that change, Christian?
No, I don't believe it should change. I think the monarchy is special, and rightly so. It's a unique institution, both within Britain and across the world, and a very important one. And I think the rule on the King or Queen not paying inheritance tax was put in place very deliberately because, you know, over the years, the royal estate would be gradually eroded to the point that they no longer had any homes or castles or land for private use. And I think they give a great deal to this country. They generate a huge amount of revenue. And I think this carve-out is a fair privilege that they have.
But perhaps the Crown estate, which the sovereign grant will come from, and the duchies are slightly different and should be taxed differently?
Of course they should. I mean, it's ridiculous. You've just defended the most unforgivable privilege that is being given to this family. And as for the millions they're bringing into this country, France, which is a republic, gets 100 times more revenue from tourists who go to Versailles than come here. Check it out, 90 million versus 900 million. But why shouldn't they pay tax? We just had a revelations by Channel 4 in the Sunday Times, which is no left-wing newspaper, about just how much money Charles and William are making from the duchies. Mm-hmm. They should be paying tax.
All right, well, on Jeremy's show yesterday, one caller was asked why the monarch doesn't have to pay tax when farmers will have to. I think we might have a clip of that from earlier on yesterday's show.
You can't have one rule for one and one rule for everybody else. And the royal family, Prince Charles and Prince William, or King Charles, they didn't pay inheritance tax.
So, Brenda, when you say scrap it,
all the farms off the mother.
Now, Brenda from Wiltshire, that was her there that you heard, joins us now on the show. Brenda, thank you very much for joining us again. You stick by those comments then?
Yeah, good morning to the panel. Yes, I do think that they should pay. Just imagine how many millions the government would get in from them. And they don't pay inheritance tax on the land. So farmers, we wouldn't have any food or anything. They have to pay inheritance tax. OK, fair enough. If that's the rule, then King Charles and Prince William should pay their share.
But what about the argument that Christian put forward that we don't want to deplete the royal family going forward? If we actually tax them inheritance tax, then every monarch going forward will own less and less land, potentially. You're essentially selling off the royal family.
No, we're not. We're just paying our dues. And look at all the homes the royal family have got. Mm-hmm. You can only live in one. And why should we have to pay inheritance tax on the land and the royal family doesn't? It's just a rule, that's all. Well, they're not going to be bankrupt. It's just the rule. Or leave the farmers alone.
Crucially, Brenda, actually quite a lot of the royal family's assets are owned by the state. So many of those properties that you're referring to are, I suppose, managed by the royal family, but they are in actual fact owned by the taxpayer, so the royal family couldn't sell it. Now, that's not true when it comes to the duchies, in which case that most of that is private and they are profiting off that. I wonder whether we could have almost two different systems for the two different sort of piles of money, if you like, that the royal family have access to. Do you think that would be fair?
Not really, no. I just think that whatever land they own, they should pay inheritance tax on. They're getting everything free.
Okay,
and they fly all over the world, and yet they reckon they're environmentalists, you know.
Well,
and talking about the tax, if Rachel Reeves taxed the farmers, she must tax the royal family inheritance.
Okay, Brenda, thank you very much for your call, but taxing the land that they own is where things start to become a little complicated because
no, it doesn't become complicated. Everybody has to pay tax, and they've negotiated this extraordinary deal. They're amongst the richest people in this country. We are not permitted to know what their wills say even. Their wills are kept confidential. Okay. Why?
Well,
Why can't we know how much wealth they have?
Yasmin, asking for more transparency is different, but I suppose what I'm saying is you live in your house, you own your house outright, so if you want to pass that on to your child,
that's just a lie.
Different. Okay, but listen, if we were to say that you don't own your house, you can live in your house, you can decorate your house, but you can't ever buy or sell your house.
No, I tell you what.
But if you want to pass it on to your child, you're going to have to pay inheritance.
No, that's the biggest lie the people have been sold. It all belongs to us. It doesn't belong to us. During COVID, when people were desperate for places to walk because the parks were getting sodding, and I remember there was a campaign to have the grounds of Buckingham Palace, which is lying empty, so that people could just walk there. They wouldn't let it happen. So if it belongs to us, why couldn't we walk there?
No, it's in the care of the royal family, but they can't buy or sell anything. They can't sell the Buckingham Palace.
It's just the worst lie the people have been sold. It's a lie.
Is it a lie?
Look, I think it's important to point out that there's a reason why so many anti-monarchists are so passionate about this issue, because there are underlying motives which are ultimately about the degradation and the destruction and the abolition of the royal family. Now, this is just one method to slowly wear them out financially over a number of successions. But, you know, if you want to make it a fairness point, I'm more than happy to go on record and say I don't think anyone should pay inheritance tax. I think it's a morally bankrupt tax that is, you know, the state appropriating wealth from dead people, which people have worked very hard to build up, that should be passed on to their kids. The thresholds have been frozen now for 15 years. It's incredibly unfair. And if we want to talk about fairness, everyone should be like the monarchy. They shouldn't pay inheritance tax.
No, I want to pay inheritance tax.
Why?
Because I believe there is such a thing as society.
You've been taxed so much throughout your life.
I've said to my accountant, I've said it, and I'm saying it here, I will pay inheritance tax. More of us should think about what's people who are alive. And you know, inheritance tax is the biggest cause of inequality in this country. So that's another debate. But I want to return to the royal family again. The fact that next year, next January, the money they get from us, the taxpayer,
the sovereign
doubles. It doubles.
But that's for the renovations to Buckingham Palace predominantly.
Well, I'm sorry, my house needs a repair.
We should be very clear. When we talk about the Crown Estate, right, the King went bankrupt a few hundred years ago. He gave all of his property, all of his land, which is now all over London, has buildings on it, raises huge amounts of revenue. All of that revenue now goes to the Treasury. It goes to the public coffers. The royal family get a small bit back, which you're right is increasing next year, but net we are still making a huge amount of profit from renting royal land to shops, to businesses across the country.
They make the money. They make the money.
We give them a bit of it back.
You're saying that what Christian's saying isn't true, and as far as I'm aware, on paper, that is how it's supposed to function.
No,
you're talking
that
about
investigation, please look up the facts in that investigation.
Yes,
they are the ones who are getting the money.
Yes, yes.
William and Charles are getting the money.
Through the Duchess.
Through the Duchess, not from the Crown Estate.
That's why I'm trying to explain. There's two different pots of money.
But it's both. I think both. They are unspeakably wealthy when there is unspeakable poverty in our country.
Okay, but we need to make it very clear, though, because I think it's starting to get confusing. It's getting confusing in my head that we have two different pots of money that the royals are making cash out or are getting cash from. One is the Crown Estate that they get the royal grant from. All of that money goes to the government. The government decides a percentage every year that the royal family can take. They take that and it is to pay for basically being royal. The other part are the duchies, which both Charles and William own different variants of the same sort of thing, and they own that land privately. Now, they can buy and sell that, they treat it as a business, they rent those properties out. That's where they're renting out to the NHS and the defence and all those sorts of political departments, which is where the controversy comes into. And I suppose the question is, if we're going to ask them to pay inheritance tax, are we asking them to pay inheritance tax on the full lot? Are we asking them to pay inheritance tax just on the duchies or on the sovereign grant, which actually they're properties that they can't necessarily buy or own? I hope that's become a little bit more clear.
I mean, I'd also make one other point, which is, compare the numbers we're talking about. What should King Charles have paid if he were to pay inheritance tax? It'd be a few dozens of 50 million quid, bit like that. It's like,
I think 22 million.
22 million pounds. I mean, it's like, what, a week of NHS funding? It'd be gone like that.
It's still
It'd be
unfair.
gone like that. It would go into one of the many black holes, and I say I value the royal family more than public quangos and civil servants.
In this country, we have family carers who are being taken to court if they get £1 more per week for the paid work they do. £1 more. They're taken to court, right? They're persecuted. And you're telling me £53 million is nothing?
Not in the grand scheme of things.
It's just ridiculous. This defence of the
country.
indefensible.
I'm going to go back to the calls now. Sharon from Staffordshire, how do you feel about this? Do you think that the royal family should be paying inheritance tax?
Good morning, Storm.
Hi.
And Yasmin, bravo to Yasmin. She's made a fantastic point this morning about the royal family. Now, you tell me why Charles and William should be exempt from paying inheritance tax. Why should they?
The defence would be that we don't want to diminish our royal family. If it is an institution that we want to keep up there and it's bringing in money for tourism.
Storm, the royal family is costing us a lot of money. And what about us being in this altogether, this austerity period that we're going through? They're not going through anything. They're still getting all the money still.
Sharon says they cost us.
What about the people that need it?
Sharon says they cost us too much money, Christian.
Well, they don't cost us money. As an institution, they're fantastic for the country. They bring in so much tourism. The Crown Estate generates huge profits for the Treasury. They are a net benefit. And also, I don't want to get too down on the sort of grubby money aspect of it all. The royal family is above money. It's above politics. It's a hugely important institution. It's part of who we are. And I will do anything to defend that.
I wonder, Sharon, whether the argument, because I've heard this argument posed as well, that actually neither the royal family or farmers should be paying inheritance tax because essentially running land has been passed down from generation to generation. So we have generations of wealth and knowledge in these individual families which are passing down the generations. And the minute we get rid of that and you get a newbie farmer in or a newbie landowner in, they won't run the land as well. We won't get as much out of the crops. We won't get as much yield out of that land. And it could be bad for our economy.
Storm, I just think basically, my opinion is that we need to get rid of the royal family completely. That's what we need to do.
But also,
this would be a way of doing it. Sharon, thank you for your call.
But there's another point. If you look at the list of who owns the biggest land share in this country, there are dukes and earls and barons, all of who historically stole the land from the peasantry. Okay? So, and then it's the farmers rent that land and work on it. So this isn't protecting working farmers. A lot of it is about the rich not wanting to pay anything to the state.
But I think a lot of this is just sort of socialist utopianism, right? If all of, the dukes and the barons and the king and, if all this land is got rid of from their hands, it's not going back to the people. It will be bought up by the Qataris. It will be bought up by American conglomerates.
How do you know?
Because that land has to be owned by someone.
And you think the world over, it's owned by barons and earls?
No, it's owned by private actors.
Well,
it's owned by businessmen and oil barons.
If we look at what's happening to football at the moment, that's what's happening to our
land
football
is a
clubs.
very different thing.
Okay, Mandy from Jersey, what's your view on this one?
Oh, Storm, I'm so angry. My heckles are up. I agree
Good.
with Yasmin.
Okay.
I'm in Jersey, right? We've got a lot of millionaires over here, but unfortunately, I'm a pauper. So Prince Charles and Prince William, King Charles, sorry, should be paying tax. They've got 7 residences. People forget that, not just Buckingham Palace.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, this is wrong. You're either rich or you're poor. And I'm sorry, the royal family have got a really bad reputation anyway. Come on. Yeah, and I agree. I agree with Yasmin. It's so wrong, absolutely so wrong.
But Mandy, I suppose when it comes to the Crown Estate, and this is the properties that we own, they manage and they determine the rules on, which Yasmin was very annoyed about over COVID. Many people were very annoyed about it over COVID. But they can't sell those properties if they're in financial dire straits. They can't do anything with those properties essentially financially, and yet you're still saying that they should pay inheritance tax. Well, that'll mean that every generation...
but they are getting rent. And plus the fact, Prince Charles, King Charles, well, maybe not on that, but King Charles owns most of Wales. I mean, really? Come on. This is not right.
I don't know about the most of Wales at the moment.
He owns a lot of Wales.
I think he definitely owns a lot of land, some of which is private and some of which is state-owned. And I suppose my question to you, Mandy, is are we charging inheritance tax on his private land or his state-owned land or the whole caboodle?
It should be on his private land. Okay. And if everybody is paying taxes, why shouldn't he?
Okay, Mandy, well, they pay income tax. They just don't pay corporation tax, which is a whole other tax we could also have a debate about. All right, Mandy, thank you very much for your call.
They get to choose, don't they? I'd love to choose.
Yes, it is a bit strange that they've opted in, which means
the Queen
that they
decided she would pay income tax and how much. I mean, ridiculous.
Well, I mean,
it is absolutely ridiculous.
It actually, well, technically the government allowed that deal to go through. So there's an element, there was a democratically elected government that passed that deal for the Queen. So.
OK, I think it was John Major, wasn't it? Carol from Glamorgan, Mid Glamorgan, what's your view on this one?
Oh, good morning. Hello, Yasmin. What a woman.
All right, we're getting lots of love for Yasmin here.
I'd like to make the point that not only do they not pay inheritance tax, they don't pay corporation tax, and they don't pay any other taxes. And
they pay income tax, but we've just discussed that voluntary.
Yes, but the Queen only volunteered to pay that after Windsor Castle caught fire. She got the begging bowl out to the public, and the public refused to pay it. Mm-hmm. And that's when she volunteered to pay income tax. But the point is, if there are underprivileged people in this country, why are there no such thing as overprivileged people? And why do they make money from charities and any other building on the Duchy of Cornwall and Duchy of Lancaster estates? They are milking it in every year. Children in need pay £120,000 to the Duchy of Cornwall every year. So when they tell the viewer that all this money goes to the charity, it does not.
Carol, you make some really interesting points, and I wonder whether if they controlled the duchies the same way as people do non-for-profit organisations or charities, whether we would feel the same about it. But they don't. They run it like a business, and you're right, they make a lot of money out of it. Carol, thank you very much for your call. Thanks for all your calls on this. We are going to have to move on.